Okay, so I'm now ready to start adding my content to this structure that I've set up. And the first thing I'm going to do is going to add the logo here on the left hand side. And I've already created that beforehand using Fireworks. There's the logo image saved in my images folder. So what I should be able to do is just drag that across and drop it into there. It asks for some alternate text. So what you should do is give each of your images a label. It's good practice so that anybody who has poor eyesight or cannot see, who's accessing your website through a web screen reader, the tags or the alternate text helps the screen reader describe what the images are to help that person have a good idea of what that web page would look like. So I'm just going to put logo. Click OK. There we go. Got my logo there. Now I need to add my title, my ECA Ecatastic title here. So I'm just going to type that in, ECA. Oh. Okay. Now to control the size of that, you've got a number of options. You could go down here and you could change it from heading 4, heading 5, and so on. Heading 1 being the largest. You might find, well, that's not big enough. You can change the font and the size by going into page properties and changing the size of the text for the whole page. And there you can also choose what type of font you want. There we go. I put 36, but I could also put in a higher number. Whoops, that's probably too high. Something like that. The only problem is it means that all the fonts on your page will have the same font size, which may not be so good. So alternatively, you can highlight the text, and then down here you can add what's called a CSS rule. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's basically a rule you add to your web page that describes how this title should be displayed. And as soon as I go to CSS, you can see I've got those options there to change the font type and to change the size. So we change that to 40. There we go. Now let me just go back to the design. Is that the right color? Whoops. No, so we need kind of yellowish color to that design there. So I'm going to highlight the text. Change the font color. Okay, and when we do add new CSS rules, it does ask us to give a label to the object that we're applying this rule to. So we're applying this style rule of the font color yellow and this size here to my title. So it makes sense to give that style rule the label title. Actually, we'll call it main title because I've got a feeling title is already used in HTML. So main title, there we go. Okay, so there's my title. And then I can start adding my my buttons. So we can see on the design we've then got our buttons, which forms part of the navigation bar. And I've already created my buttons already, and I followed the tutorial on the Google Classroom, how to create website buttons. So I followed those steps, created my own homepage buttons, and you do create two versions of the button. You'll see why in a minute. And so you can see then that over here in my images I've got Home 1, Home 2 button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and choose Insert, Image Object, Roll Over Image. What a roll over image is you may know this, is an image that when you then put your mouse over, the image changes in some way, just to kind of show you that you are hovering over something that you can click onto. So I'm going to click on roll over image. I might call this home. And then I'm going to choose what image I want to use for the original image. So and it's in my images folder, and it's home 1. That's the original image. And the image I want it to change to when I hover over that image is home 2, which is essentially the same image but a different color. There we go. And then probably should give it alternate text, home button. And then if I click on OK, and there we go, we can see that in that cell there I've now added my home button. So we could test that now just to see what that looks like. If I go up to here and choose preview in Internet Explorer, and there we go. That's what my web page looks like at the moment. Still need to work on it, but the basic structure is getting there. Now you might be thinking, well, actually that's okay, but the lines around the table make it look a bit ugly. Well, that's fine, because once we've got our structure sorted out, we can, back in the design, go to the table tab here, and we can see that our table has a border of 1, and I'm going to change that setting to 0, and that essentially hides the borders to the cells. So then we're kind of hiding the fact that we're using a table to structure this web page from the end user. And so it will end up looking something like that. So there we go. So my next step will probably now to create my buttons for the rest of my navigation bar. So my rugby, football and netball rollover buttons, and then I'll need to add them into here, and then I'll start adding the content into my main part of my web page here.